You're at the front of a queue of traffic waiting to turn right into a side road. Why is it important to check your right mirror just before turning? To check for overtaking vehicles. Which vehicles are least likely to be affected by side wind? Cars. What action should you take when you see flashing amber lights under a school warning sign? What action should you take when you see flashing amber lights under a school warning sign? Reduce speed until you're clear of the area. At night, what does it mean if you see a pedestrian wearing reflective clothing and carrying a bright red light? You're approaching an organized walk. You're approaching an organized walk. You're about to reverse into a side road. What should you do if a pedestrian is waiting to cross behind your car? Give way to the pedestrian. You're about to overtake a cyclist on a road that has a 30 miles per hour speed limit. How much room should you leave them as you overtake? At least as much room as you would if you were overtaking a car. Where should you take particular care to look for motorcyclists and cyclists? At junctions. What should you do when you see an older person about to cross the road ahead? Be careful, they may misjudge your speed. Why should you allow extra room while overtaking a motorcyclist on a windy day? The rider may be blown in front of you. You're driving at night. What should you do if you're dazzled by a vehicle behind you? Set your mirror to the anti-dazzle position. You've driven up to a pelican crossing. What must you do while the amber light is flashing? Give way to any pedestrians on the crossing. Where would you see this sign? On a school bus. Powered vehicles used by disabled people are small and can be hard to see. What must they display if they're traveling on a dual carriageway? Flashing amber beacon. You're on a country road. What should you expect to see coming towards you on your side of the road? Pedestrians. Which is the most vulnerable road user? Motorcyclist. You want to reverse into a side road. What should you do if you aren't sure that the area behind your car is clear? Get out and check. What does it mean when a moving vehicle is showing a flashing amber beacon? The vehicle is slow moving. What does it mean if you see a pedestrian with a dog that has a yellow or burgundy coat? The pedestrian is deaf. Which sign means that there may be people walking along the road? How will a school crossing patrol signal you to stop? By displaying a stop sign. Which road users are most difficult to see when you're reversing your car? Which road users are most difficult to see when you're reversing your car? Children. Why should you look carefully for motorcyclists and cyclists at junctions? They're harder to see. You're following two cyclists as they approach a roundabout in the left-hand lane. Where would you expect the cyclists to go? Any direction. Why do motorcyclists often look round over their right shoulder just before turning right? To check for traffic in their blind area. Why do motorcyclists often look round over their right shoulder just before turning right? To check for traffic in their blind area. You see a pedestrian carrying a white stick that also has a red band. What does this mean? They're deaf and blind. A horse rider is in the left-hand lane approaching a roundabout. Where should you expect the rider to go? In any direction. This junction, controlled by traffic lights, has a marked area between two stop lines. What's this for? To allow cyclists to position in front of other traffic. You're about to overtake a cyclist. Why should you leave them as much room as you would give to a car? The cyclist might be unsettled if you pass too near them. You've just passed your driving test. How can you reduce your risk of being involved in a collision? By taking further training. Where would you see this sign? On the rear of a school bus or coach. You're driving in a slow-moving queue of traffic. What should you do just before changing lane? Look for motorcyclists filtering through the traffic. You're driving in a slow-moving queue of traffic. What should you do just before changing lane? Look for motorcyclists filtering through the traffic. What's the purpose of these road markings? To ensure children can see and be seen when they're crossing the road. What hazard should you be especially aware of if you're turning left into a side road? Pedestrians. What hazard should you be especially aware of if you're turning left into a side road? Pedestrians. You're driving past parked cars. What should you do if you see a bicycle wheel sticking out between the cars? Slow down and be prepared to stop for a cyclist. You're driving past parked cars. What should you do if you see a bicycle wheel sticking out between the cars? Slow down and be prepared to stop for a cyclist. Why should you check for motorcyclists just before turning right into a side road? They may be overtaking on your right. Why should you check for motorcyclists just before turning right into a side road? They may be overtaking on your right. Why do motorcyclists wear bright clothing? To make them more visible. You want to turn right from a main road into a side road. What should you do just before turning? Check for traffic overtaking on your right. What should you do if the left-hand pavement is closed due to street repairs? What should you do if the left-hand pavement is closed due to street repairs? Watch out for pedestrians walking in the road. What should you do when you're following a learner driver who stalls at a junction? Be patient, as you expect them to make mistakes. What should you do when you're following a learner driver who stalls at a junction? Be patient, as you expect them to make mistakes. You're about to overtake a slow-moving motorcyclist. Which sign would make you take special care? What should you do when you're following a... It's very windy. What should you do if you're behind a motorcyclist who's overtaking a high-sided vehicle? Keep well back. You see a horse rider as you approach a roundabout. What should you do if they're signaling right but keeping well to the left? Stay well back. Which vehicles should you allow extra room as you overtake them? Bicycle. The road outside this school is marked with yellow zigzag lines. What do these lines mean? You shouldn't wait or park your vehicle here. You're waiting to come out of a side road. Why should you look carefully for motorcycles? Motorcycles can easily be hidden behind obstructions. Why do motorcyclists use dipped headlights in daylight? So that the rider can be seen more easily. You're turning right from a main road into a side road. There's no oncoming traffic. What should you do if pedestrians are standing on the pavement waiting to cross the side road? Wait and give way to the pedestrians. What should you do if you want to turn left at a junction where pedestrians have started to cross? Give way to them. You're driving past a line of parked cars. What should you do if a ball bounces out into the road ahead? Slow down and be prepared to stop for children. You're traveling along a residential street. There are parked vehicles on the left-hand side. Why should you keep your speed down? Children may run out from between the vehicles.